Come, let us explore the hidden meaning of our stress response. When we experience stress, we tend to act in a manner which is in direct opposition to not only societal norms, but our own preferences. Why does that happen? When we perceive stress, there is a profound it triggers our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression, which has a direct relationship with our dopamine-oriented reward system. So these two together ensure that we will act in a competitive and cruel manner. You see, our survival instincts could be described as by the 6 F's. Whenever we are exposed to a new phenomena or organism or individual, viscerally, deep down, there are some rapid fire questions we're asked, at least if not literally, then figuratively. We seem to regard that anything new with these questions. Do we fuck it? Do we feed on it? Do we fight it? Do we flee from it? Do we faint before it? Do we fawn over it? We can't meditate these fundamental desires for reproduction and consumption. We cannot pray away or believe away or will away our fundamental dreads that drive us to combat and flight and faint and fawn. These are hardwired into us, and their presence is not an indictment. The question is not on a fundamental level, are we wired for desire and dread? The question is, what are we going to do with the stress when it befalls us? What are we going to do when these impulses blossom like a flower in the spring? How we respond to these is the question of liberation. The liberation that is offered to us by many meditators is not liberation from the presence of dread and desire, for that is hardwired into our central nervous system. The liberation is not from the presence of desires and dreads, but from their tyranny. So that although they might be there, they no longer control our choices and our utterances and our deeds. That which, and we'll explore more of this in greater detail in the next lesson in about, in about 11 and a half hours. But right now I want to sit with this for you. A Buddha is not someone devoid of an amygdala. A Buddha is not someone devoid of a dopamine-oriented reward system. A Buddha is simply someone who has gotten so good at practicing the Eightfold Path that they do so spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. And they use their mastery of the Eightfold Path to transcend the tyranny of their survival instincts. 9 times out of 10, our survival instincts are misfiring. We're not living in the jungle where there are panthers. We're not living in a savanna where there are lions. But our body reacts as if they were. Consider, if you will, a spare tire. I'm a senior member of Generation X. I was born in 1965. And as a little boy, when I would explore my parents' car, I would notice that in their trunk, underneath the mat, was a spare tire and a jack. And the spare tire was the exact spit-in image of the other 4 tires on the car. The only difference being the spare tire was brand new and very, very clean. And so back then, if you got in an accident, but if you were on the highway and you got a flat, you could change the flat and be on your merry way. And the only thing that would drive you to have that flat repaired is a sense of planning and responsibility. These days, way back since the late 80s, our spare tires have been called donut tires, and they are distinctly different and smaller than the remaining 3 tires of the car. And it's probably good enough to get you off the freeway into the very first tire shop you find. But you most certainly would not want to go on a 100-mile journey on a donut tire. Similarly, in a true life or death situation, our survival instincts are necessary. The very fact that they are present in 99% of us infers that it is evolutionarily beneficial for the entire species. The problem happens is when it stops being used when it's necessary and is used in a default manner. And yet, that's what society conditions us to do. They condition us, especially in late-stage capitalism, they condition us to be forever hustling. It's in music, it's in movies, it's in TV shows, it's in novels. People can squander their relationships and their years always on the hustle, always on the make, and it's just not sustainable. It might help us survive, but it most certainly will not help us to thrive. This is the Dzogchen Someday Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For multiple decades, I spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering the teachings and techniques of each school of meditation so that you wouldn't have to. It is Luke Skywalker early Friday morning. Come, let us meditate like a Jedi. Let us practice the essence of meditation. The essence of mindfulness, which is to silently and mentally recite the verb watch every time we passively notice air enter our nostrils. Let us practice the essence of meditation, which is to silently and mentally recite the verb rest every time we passively notice air exiting our nostrils. This act of watching and resting could be considered one repetition. In our practice of Bengali crease counting. We count 13, we collect 13 sets of 13 repetitions, bearing in mind that the 13 is actually 1 plus 12. A solitary repetition followed by a dozen repetitions. And we're going to keep track of our first solitary repetition by using the Pasadi Mudra or meditation gesture, which is useful for many things. It is useful to help us gently invite our real or imagined subtle energy to coalesce at the crown of our head. It is useful to practice meditation when we feel ourselves at the precipice of a meltdown. It is useful at night when we lay in bed to fall asleep. And it is also useful for the big sleep of death, that we might transition peacefully. The practice of the Pasadi Mudra is simple. Let us use the tip of our left index finger to support the lower knuckle of our right index finger, palms up in our lap. And as such, count our first solo repetition of watch rest. In order to keep track of our first dozen repetitions, I said solo repetition. I think single repetition makes more sense. But to keep track of our next dozen repetitions, let us turn our attention to our right hand. Every time we silently and mentally recite the verb watch during oopsie, that's an error. Let's fix that. Here we go. Every time we silently and mentally recite the verb watch during our inhalation, let's advance our right thumb across sets of creases. The first being at the bottom of our right little finger, and the 12th being near the top, are the higher set of creases of our right index finger. Together as a team, let us practice right now. So we've kept track of one set of 13 repetitions. How are we going to keep track of another 12 sets? Simple. We place the tip of our left thumb upon the lower set of creases of our right little finger. And now perform our single repetition. We now return to our right hand and collect our dozen repetitions of watch rest. To keep track of our next set of 13 repetitions, we advance our left thumb. And now that you have the basic idea of how to count multiple sets of 13 repetitions each, let us rest our hands palms up in our lap. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques that support meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window, for I tend to check for questions about once every 14 minutes or so. Let's take a deeper look at meditation. When we make the mistake of actively analyzing that which we have noticed, if we persist in actively analyzing, we will inevitably so fatigue our dorsal prefrontal cortex that it will trigger our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. However, when we work with our autonomic nervous system, specifically our parasympathetic facet, it can not only calm the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala, but it can gently stimulate our anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy. Well, sounds good. How do we do it? Every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, we have already evolved. Let me rephrase this. Every time we exhale, we have evolved to automatically access both the tippy top as well as the very bottom of our spinal cord. These two regions, working as a team, function as the core of our parasympathetic nervous system, which causes us to physically relax and mentally release to such a degree during our exhalation that which we want during our previous inhalation could fleetingly feel less stressful, less permanent, less defining or not self, and as non-graspable as a vast empty void. It would seem that a simile is only as effective as it is relatable. Therefore, we must ask the question, what? What is a real-world example of a non-graspable vast empty void? How about the illusion of the infinite azure sky on a bright and beautiful cloudless morn, which although could look tantalizing to the eye, could feel non-graspable to the hand? And so whether we are talking about emptiness or not-self, these are just figures of speech used to describe the fleeting experience latent within each relaxing exhalation. Good morning, John Rasta. The moment you have a specific question about the philosophies or techniques that support meditation, do not hesitate to type your question in great detail in the chat window. Now that we've collected 13 sets of 13 repetitions each, how will we collect our second collection? Simple. I'm going to adjust the camera here for a moment so you can see my hands without breaking my wrists. So we have been using the tip of our left index finger to support the lower knuckle of our right index finger. So now we're going to slide our left index finger until it comes to the middle knuckle of our right index finger. This also will help us keep track of our first single repetition of watch rest, wherein, as we passively notice air enter our nostrils plural, we silently and mentally recite the verb watch. And as we passively notice air exit our nostril, we silently and mentally recite the verb rest. Now, how are we going to keep track of an additional dozen repetitions? Simple. We turn our attention to our right hand. Every time we inhale, we advance our right thumb, beginning with the lower set of creases at the bottom of our right index finger, and concluding with the higher set of creases on our right. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Beginning with the lower set of creases on our right little finger, and concluding with the higher set of creases on our right index finger. Together as a team, let us practice right now. To keep track of our next single repetition, we place the tip of our left thumb upon the lower set of creases of our left little finger. To keep track of our next dozen repetitions, we return to our right hand. To keep track of our next single repetition, we advance our left thumb to the next set of creases. And now that you get the basic idea of how we can count to multiple sets of 13 repetitions each, let us rest our hands, palms up in our lap, for that is most ergonomically sound. Having gathered our second collection of 13 sets of 13 repetitions, we now switch gears from watching and resting to merely feeling and resting, wherein we silently and mentally recite the verb feel every time we passively notice our chest swell with breath, and we silently and mentally recite the verb rest every time we passively notice our chest subtly sink as gently we exhale. To keep track of this, it could be useful for us to practice the sati mudra, or mindfulness gesture, wherein, let me adjust the camera, wherein we use the tip of our left middle finger to support the lower knuckle of our right middle finger, palms up in our lap. Having tracked our single repetition of feel rest, we now keep track of our dozen repetitions on our right hand. To keep track of our next solo repetition, we touch the tip of our left thumb to the lower set of creases of our left little finger. And to keep track of the next dozen repetitions, we return to our right hand. To keep track of our next solitary repetition, we advance our left thumb. And now that we've got a good idea of how to count 13 sets of 13 repetitions each, let's rest both our hands palms up in our lap. Let's take a deeper look at this thing called mindfulness. The more we actively focus, the more we exhaust our medial prefrontal cortex to the point of triggering our amygdala, the seat of both anxiety and aggression. However, when we passively cooperate with our autonomic nervous system, not only do we experience heightened awareness and peace, but we also calm the anxiety and aggression of our amygdala, as well as gently stimulate our anterior cingulate gyrus, which functions as the hub of our mirror neurons, the seat of empathy. You see, every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we have evolved to automatically access the middle bit of our spinal cord, which functions as the hub of our sympathetic nervous system, or the core of our sympathetic nervous system, which has evolved to help us to vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly notice all mind's antics of perception, emotion, intention, cognition, recollection, and imagination. All of them. From the external to the internal, from the physical to the mental, from the pleasurable to the painful, from the interesting to the boring, from the convenient to the arduous, from the glorious to the grotesque. You have taken your first step into a much larger world. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. For Meditate Like a Jedi is made possible thanks to the generosity of viewers just like you. In approximately 10.5 hours, I would very much like to return to lead today's desk practice of Meditate Like a Jedi. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.